Right, very good, thank you. So today is the February 6th edition of the Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Welcome, everybody. We will start by a call to order of all attendees. I am assuming, are you all going to do the roll call?
Gail, are you going to do the roll call?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now,
Okay, my VPN kind of went a little bit wonky for a second. I am so sorry. Okay, Jeff Sims,
here.
Mike Williams,
Here.
Brian McCarthy,
Here.
Jonathan Scott,
Here.
Michael English, Cal Hardy, Robert Frey, Anna Quinones. Oh, Robert, was that you?
Yes, I'm online.
Thank you. Laura Lenhart.
Here.
Gina Evans.
Here.
Leland Dicus. Marcelo Tavernari. Bob Campbell.
Here.
Jesus Perez Garcia.
Here.
Frank Koffenauer.
Here.
Is that virtual?
Yes.
Thank you. Laura Bauk.
Here.
Jay Collins.
Here, virtual.
Jennifer Malone.
Here in the room.
Nicole Sutton.
Here.
Sarah Caper.
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you please call for a vote of consent for remote participation?
Okay, could I get a motion for a vote of consent for virtual participation?
So moved, Laura.
So from Laura, get a motion from Laura. Do we have a second?
Second, Jesus.
From Jesus, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Just as a reminder, please announce your name before the motion. It just helps the recording for everybody. Thank you very much. Next up is public comment. So we have a few people in the audience or anybody here that wishes to speak. Doesn't appear to be so. Is there anyone online that desires to speak?
Everybody does have the ability to unmute themselves.
Okay, give another couple of seconds. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes. There was a bit of a hiccup last time, so we're going to be looking at two sets of minutes from the December and January. So is there any comments or concerns on either?
I'll note that there was a correction on the December minutes that has been made. At the last meeting.
Recall what the
I didn't.
Okay. One item I had brought up is that my alternate was here at the December meeting. I believe somebody else had a similar
I
comment.
did, and they fixed it.
They fixed yours. I don't see mine that had been addressed, but I might have overlooked it.
Jeff, we will make sure we make that as part of the motion to that correction.
Okay. So if you could just add that Michelle Jenkins was present in person.
And that was December.
That was for the December 7th meeting. Yeah. But does anybody have any comments on that for the January meeting? I'm hearing none. So with that, I think we can get a motion. Since there's been no comments on either, I think we can do a single motion to approve both the December 2022 and the January 2023 minutes. Can I have?
Kevin makes a motion to approve both sets of minutes with the revisions as noted today.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Do we have a second?
Brian McCarthy, seconds.
Very, thank you, Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, so we are good to go. Formalities complete. It is time for our first action item, which is the TIP amendment.
Roger, I just made you the presenter. We can see it.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
We can't hear you.
Can you see my screen?
We can see the screen, but it may be the notes page. There we go, perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon, TAC. I'm Roger Matthew. I'm with the TPO staff. We have 7 amendments to bring to you today. The new HART maintenance facility, lighting resurfacing projects, I-4 truck parking, and the EV charging infrastructure. These are the 7 amendments that are being requested by FDOT to show the additional funding of the fiscal year 23 TIP. The new HART maintenance facility. This is HART's top priority. Here is the timeline of the funds that are or were approved and transferred. The FTAT fund code on the right side of the slide means the Federal Transit Administration transfer. The top portion of the slide shows that as of June 2022, 9.2 million in FTA funds were programmed for bus replacements. The lower portion of the slide is showing that the 9.2 million are being removed from the bus replacements because they are now being transferred to the HART maintenance facility. The top portion of this slide shows the 4 million being rolled forward in 2023 to fund the HART maintenance facility. Combined with the 9.2 million we just talked about, that accounts for the sum total of 13.2 million on the ledger at the bottom. The next amendment is the excuse me guys, the second project in this TIP amendment relates to 2 weigh stations along I-4 out in Seffner in need of additional truck parking spaces. At both stations there are currently 12 parking spaces, and this project will fund an additional 5 at each station. This aerial view shows where the additional 5 spaces will go to. To accomplish that, the pavement will need to be reinforced to accommodate the weight of the trucks, and then it will just need to be striped. And the top portion of this slide shows the 2.5 million addition of funds for the eastbound weigh station. The bottom portion showing 2.2 million addition for the westbound weigh station. Projects are exactly the same, so the 250,000 cost difference is due to minor locational differences. State Road 60 lighting from US 41 to 301 will be new lighting in the corridor to enhance visibility for all users. Most of the corridor from east of 50th Street to US 31 is unlit, so TICO will be installing new poles along the majority of the segment. At all other locations along the corridor, there are poles. Where there are poles, the existing fixtures will be upgraded to LED lighting. The exception will be the bridge over the Tampa Bypass Canal, at which poles cannot be attached to, so no lighting will be provided in that area. And as a note, it's not part of the TIP amendment, but just as an FYI, that this segment is also scheduled for resurfacing in fiscal year 24, so that with these 2 projects, the character should be changed dramatically over the next couple of years. And here we are showing the addition of 711,000 for fiscal year 23. And the next amendment is the Southdale Maybe resurfacing. This is a milling and resurfacing project. The corridor stretches from just north of the entrance to MacDill Air Force Base up to Ballast Point Boulevard. And 50,000 has been added to fiscal year 23 to begin the project later this year and is expected to be completed in 2024. And the last amendment here will provide funding to install electrical vehicle charging infrastructure along I-4 at locations to be determined. FDOT District 7 will open this project up to proposals and will allow that process to inform the locations and the number of chargers, type, and connections to be installed. This slide shows the addition of the GFEV funds in fiscal year 2023. And as part of our required public engagement activities in January, we published a newsletter describing the amendments. We published informational flyers on social media, published a web page, and posted signs in the ground near the location of the affected projects. And we are recommending the approval of the 7 amendments to the fiscal year 23 TIP and recommend approval to the TPO board. And that's all I have for you guys today. Any questions?
Appreciate the summation. Do we have any comments regarding the amendments that were mentioned? No one with comment. This isn't really, well, I'll just say certain ones of them I'm more familiar with. Definitely in agreement with the lighting on 60. It's an area I frequent. One thing I did note is that I don't believe there's sidewalks anywhere along there. Not that that would be encompassed in this project, but maybe something that could be looked at down the line, at least in a study, because that is it's a heavily traveled area, and I don't know how much pedestrian and bicycle traffic there are there. I know the trail's not too far on one side, but nevertheless, it's maybe something to think about. But the lighting, I definitely encourage, and I wholeheartedly support the last amendment for the EV charging stations. We talked about it at the last meeting. I think there was 2 that are scheduled to go in along I-4. Anything to move that along would certainly be encouraged by EPC. My only other question was, did I see that right, that it's costing $2.5 million for 5 parking places? Roger?
2.5 for the eastbound way station?
No, right.
Yes.
Is it, and it's 2.5 for each station? Each side?
Eastbound is 2.5 and the westbound is 2.2.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if it's my place to say, it just seems like a lot. I know they have to be specially designed and have to be able to handle more weight and so forth, but it's an existing way station. I would think that a lot of the structures would already have been in place for expansion. So a little curious just as to why it was so much, but I mean, I'm not going to hold it up. I'm going to have to go with staff's recommendation that it's appropriate, but something that if anybody here knew anything more about it, I'd be happy to listen. That's something I would open up for discussion. So those are my comments. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring to the table?
Well, Jesus here, I'll say that parking is more expensive than we think, especially truck parking on what today looks like a ditch. Yeah, we made a bus stop not too long ago. It was 200,000 because there was a ditch, and it was not supposed to withstand trucks. So even though it looks like a lot, I'm not surprised. But it's not the common sense, right? Like we don't realize that a parking spot is $10,000 a pop, surface lot.
I guess just looking at a study, they're all going in the same area. So it's like, you know, when they have to regrade, they're going to do the whole area at one time. It's not like they're doing it in 5 separate spots where you would say, oh, okay, they're going to move equipment and stuff like that. It's just.
This is Bob from the Expressway Authority. These numbers are in line with other projects that I've seen of this type around the nation. So, like I said, truck parking is a huge issue, and it is a complicated issue to solve. So, to be honest with you, I think what they've done and how they've done it, we're lucky. There are some areas where they don't have the access to provide this stuff and be able to do it in this type of way. So I don't, it does not seem out of line with what I've seen.
Okay, thanks Bob for the input. Yeah, design wise, it looks great. You know, I certainly wouldn't, from what I would know about it, it seems to make sense. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up. That's what we're here to do, right? Is ask questions. So anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask about any of them? All right, hearing none, sounds like there's nobody arguing with any of them being approved. Do we have a motion to approve the TIP amendments as recommended by staff?
Jonathan Scott, motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Laura Beth, second.
Laura, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, next up is the 2023 safety performance targets.
Good afternoon. I'm Connor McDonald, TPO staff. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I'm Connor McDonald, TPO staff, here to present the 2023 safety performance targets. Next slide. So the 2012 Federal Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act requires MPOs to set performance targets related to the transportation system and its safety. And this act is now in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But the legislation aims to create a streamlined, performance-based and multimodal program to address the many challenges facing the U.S. transportation system. And there are 6 categories of targets aligned in the act. So for 2023, we'll be updating many of the targets, with safety being this month, potentially greenhouse gas targets in March, pavement and bridge condition and travel time reliability in April or May timeframe, along with transit asset management and public transportation agency safety plan later in the year. So for today's safety performance targets, there are 7 targets to be set. Fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, fatality rate against VMT, number of serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average, and that against VMT, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average are all required targets by the legislation. And the Hillsborough TPO has elected to set 2 additional targets, being the number of fatalities and number of motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. So where does the methodology for the target setting come from? In the 2045 LRTP, the TPO and its staff looked at historical spending trends and the sales tax forecast to predict the extent to which the performance targets can be realistically reduced. So what you're looking at is the dollar amount of transportation investments that would have invested in the sales tax scenario. So we looked at the benefit of that could be achieved in investing in safety projects. So with the sales tax, that would have been 3%, and without the sales tax, which we're using today, is a 1% reduction. So this data-driven, realistic approach not only follows the original legislation, but is highlighted as a Federal Highway Administration best practice. So now to move into the targets. As many of you may remember, in 2021, there was an all-time high of 255 fatalities. In 2022, there were 219 fatalities. While this is a significant drop, we recognize that 219 fatalities is still a great loss. So using previous years as a measurement of trend and then applying a 1% reduction factor, we're recommending a realistic data-driven target of no more than 214 annual fatalities for 2023. For fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, we've predicted the average for fiscal year or for 2023, which contains a higher of 2021, and applied a 1% reduction factor each year. Because this is a 5-year rolling average, it contains those higher years and therefore represents a higher target. So if we're able to continue the downward trend we saw in 2022, we will see a reduction in this number as we move further into those 5-year rolling averages. For fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average, we're also seeing an increase due to those high years in 2021. However, the continued trend of lower fatalities hopefully bring this number down in future years. But applying that 1% reduction factor each year, we're recommending a data-driven realistic target of 1.56. For most motorcycle fatalities, we saw a significant increase. This increase averaged with the previous 4 years, and with the applied reduction factor, leaves us with a realistic data-driven target of no more than 40.21. For annual serious injuries, we've seen a downward trend since the 2017 average. With this 1% reduction factor, we're recommending a target of no more than 1,084 serious injuries for 2023. For serious injuries compared to VMT for 100 million vehicle miles traveled, we're also seeing a reduction. Here we're recommending a target of no more than 7.56. This next slide shows non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Non-motorized primarily refers to bicycles and pedestrians. And we have seen an increase in crashes over recent years, and we're recommending a target applied with that 1% reduction factor each year to no more than 241 in calendar year 2023, or that 5-year average. For our report card, you can see that we met 2 out of 7 targets set last year. And I'll leave this for a second to review. And with that, I'd like to share 2 takeaways. One, although several targets were not met, 2022 showed a decrease in fatalities and serious injuries. Additionally, motorcycle fatalities and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries did see upward trends. So with that, we looked at 2022 national risk factors for crash deaths using the NHTSA traffic safety facts. So in 2022, nighttime and weekend driving was proportionally higher. Speeding, unrestrained or no seatbelt driving, and impaired driving were all higher in 2022. And considering those, we're sharing some local relation implementation examples. In the MPO and local government toolbox, we can design and prioritize safety projects in the capital improvement plans. In the TIP, we prioritize projects that are lower cost and are shovel ready. Also, the TPO has a speed management action plan, of which some of the recommendations are to design self-enforcing roadways, meaning narrow travel lanes, roundabouts, and speed humps, setting and communicating safe speed limits, and enforcing safe speed limits. So an example of local physical implementation is the Fletcher Avenue Complete Streets project. Before redesign and construction, the corridor saw 93 fatal and serious injury crashes. After implementation of hawk signals, raised medians, among other treatments, the corridor saw a reduction to 38 fatal and serious injury crashes. So the Fletcher Avenue treatments are a shining success story, but there are more to come. We've been working with several similar projects with local jurisdictions as it relates to the TIP. So Bullard Parkway and Temple Terrace, Collins Street and Plant City, Havana Avenue in the city of Tampa, and Sheldon Road in unincorporated Hillsborough County, not to mention the $40 million in Safe Streets for All grants announced last week for the county and city of Tampa. So the 2023 proposed performance targets, annual fatalities, no more than 214. Annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 224. Motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 40.21. Serious injuries on a rolling average, no more than 1,084. Non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries on a rolling average, no more than 241. Fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a rolling average, no more than 1.56. And serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, no more than 7.56. And with that, the recommended action today is to approve the calendar year 2023 safety performance target. And I'll be here to review any of the slides or answer any of your questions or discussion.
Okay, thank you, Connor, for the presentation. Do we have any comments from the group?
I'll just make a comment. Sorry, this is Nicole Sutton. I think it's great to see that design efforts in improving safety. So it's for me, coming from a public health standpoint, it's exciting to see that and promising.
Yes, I agree with you, especially with the most, you try to pull, this topic's been in front of us a lot of times, and it's one of those ones that's, kind of hard to assess. You're talking about what's the target on number of fatalities. It's certainly not a target we ever want to have. We all know we support Vision Zero, but there is also a practicality of living in an urban setting. And, on the very positive side, I noted that the annual serious injuries have been continually trending down. And, I have to think, like you talked about, some of the design improvements, Vision Zero, speed reduction, and probably technological improvements in vehicles and so forth. Lighting, all that is hopefully contributing to that trend, and we can keep it. But you look at some of the other ones, and they're more moving around, and that makes it more difficult. So not an easy one to look at. Sure. One
Connor,
comment.
I've got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, who's speaking on virtual?
Yeah, this is Frank Coconauer, City of Plant City. Question for Connor on the, you had a slide there that showed an increase in motorcycle and non-motorized vehicle crashes, or I don't recall exactly what the statistic was, but I wonder if there was any effort to see if there's a correlation. Has there been a real increase in say, first-time motorcyclists or increased use of bicycles? A, because the facilities are being provided more, and B, because of the economy. Is there any correlation with either of those?
I did look at some of what the data available in the crash reports, and I also looked at motorcycle registration and didn't see a specific higher rate of registration in 2022 for motorcycles. Some of the trends like related to the crash were left turn crashes with motorcycles. And if I remember correctly, there wasn't a significant number for like helmet usage that would have explained. And as far as like related to the economy, I'm not sure about that, but I can look into that for you.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sarah, yes.
And maybe I missed this, Connor, in your presentation, so I apologize if I'm missing it, but it looks like in 2022, the target for like 5-year fatalities rolling average is 224, and the actual is 217. But then the target again is less than, equal to or less than 224. Would we want to maybe make it lower to reflect the actual rather than keep with what the target was in 2022 again, especially since we're making progress?
Let's see. I may have an error in here, but let me look through these slides one more time for you.
So like in the report card there, you have 224 as the target, 217 is the actual, so we met the target. But then in the 2023, we have that same target of 224.
Thank you for pointing that out. Let me go to the non-motorized.
It's the annual fatalities 5-year average one. So that one, yes.
Right. So great question. So it's the rolling average. So because of that high number in 2021 of the 255, before the 1% reduction, we're seeing a higher number. So still applying the 1% reduction because it's a 5-year rolling average. It's higher, but we're still applying that reduction factor. Does that make sense?
Until 2021 doesn't drop,
I see.
you'll still have it
Yeah.
pushing it up.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Okay, we were talking kind of privately about, just speculating, I know it's been discussed here before, but about why was 2021 such an anomaly? And I know that I can see the math and understand, but I think it's a great question. Just, the idea with these goals, certainly we recommend it from the group is we're trying to, everybody wants to reduce. So anything we can do to do that. But yeah, I know the math doesn't always work out. But, as much as we can figure out what happened in 2021 and then try to identify those behaviors and target those improvements would certainly be good. One comment I had just in general, and this kind of follows along motorcycles and so forth, but I don't know the numbers, but I know the building that we see from our office is going on like crazy. And I'd have to imagine the number of cars on the road is increasing dramatically year to year. I think it would be relevant in a presentation like this to show how many more vehicles are on the road from 1 year before. And I would say the same thing for motorcycles too, since we're tracking those. But you talked about your risk factors and identify speeding and stuff like that. And to me, one of the big ones is there's just more people getting more congested in our county. And That's unfortunate because the results are what we see, but we can just try to keep making improvement. But I think it would help with the numbers to at least have that, if not as a slide, at least as a reference, that we could be there.
I think one of the slides has the, I think it was fatalities per 100 million BMD, and that sort of normalizes. But that's the intent of that.
Right. That's a good point. And we talked about that, and I recognize that. But regardless, I think when you're looking at a number of fatalities in a year, and it's like, well, we got another 100,000 cars on the road we did last year.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
What happens. So I just think it would be an interesting to see if there's a correlation. I don't know. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, they're looking for a motion to approve the 2023 safety performance targets and forward to the board. Can I get a motion?
This is Jay Collins. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the 2023 safety performance targets.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Nicole, second. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Nicole's got the second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, great. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next up is the status reports. First up is the Gandy Boulevard Bridge, PD&E.
Good there. All right, let me just make you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Craig Fox. I've been a part of the Department of Transportation District 7, here to present on the Gandy Boulevard PD&E study. And everybody online can see the screen?
No, sir, not yet.
No? Oh, sorry. Oh, do I have to click this button?
Yes.
Oh. All right, it's just a screen. Yep. Right. Yep. Perfect. Yeah, it's larger. There we go. Okay. So the limits of the PD&E study are shown at the screen. It goes from the west end of Pinellas County, 4th Street North, east along Gandy Boulevard to Southwest Shore Boulevard in Hillsborough County. The purpose of this project is to reduce traffic congestion and also to improve bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. And the need is proven by the fact that the segment from 4th Street to the west end of Gandy Bridge has deficient level of service in both 2016 and in the future year of 2040. And the segment from east of the Gandy Bridge to the West Shore Boulevard will have a deficient level of service in 2040 also. There's also limited bike and pedestrian accommodations along the corridor. There is limited trail segments and also limited bike lanes currently along the corridor also. We broke up the study into 3 main segments. The first one is the Pinellas segment. This is from 4th Street West to the end of Gandy, to the west end of Gandy Bridges. It's approximately 3.6 miles long. The second segment is the base segment, and that is comprised of the 2 bridge structures crossing the Old Tampa Bay. That's approximately 2.6 miles. And the third and final segment is the Hillsborough segment, which is about 1 mile long, and that's east of the Gandy Bridge, and the Gandy Bridges to West Shore Boulevard. Now, Gandy Boulevard is an important east-west corridor for both Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. It connects regionally to 275 US 19 and also to the Leroy Summit Expressway. It's also part of Florida's strategic intermodal system corridor. It also connects regional centers of both St. Pete and Tampa in the Tampa Bay area, and it is a hurricane evacuation route. Now, to quickly review the existing typical sections, starting with the one on the top left corner, that one is the Pinellas segment. It is mostly a 4-lane divided roadway with a 12-foot trail on one side of the road, north side of the road for the majority of the corridor. Next, moving on to the base segment. The current existing typical section consists of 2 bridge structures. The bridge on the right was built in 1975, and the bridge on the left was built in 1996. Both of them have 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, 10-foot shoulders on the outside and 6-foot shoulders on the inside. And the third and final segment is the Hillsborough segment. And for that segment, the state road is comprised of 2 11-foot travel lanes. And also there are sidewalks and shaded paths on both sides of the road in certain areas. And then also the Leroy 7 Expressway hovers above the road in the Hillsborough segment also. Now moving on to the preferred typical sections. First, again, I'll start with the Pinellas segment. This is from 4th Street to Brighton Bay, and also from San Martin Boulevard to east of San Fernando Drive. And the reason why these are divided up is because we have a portion that's on that's grade separated on the MSC wall that's shown on the left, and then there's a divided portion on the right. And the divided portion is in a strategic area where we can avoid some right-of-way impacts. So, starting with the first typical section, number 1, that's comprised of 4 grade separated lanes, 2 in each direction, with 10-foot shoulders on the outside and 8-foot shoulders on the inside. I'm also going to have frontage roads, 2 frontage roads on each side, and also a 12-foot multi-use trail on both the north side and the south side of the roadway. For typical section number 2, it enters the portion from Brighton Bay Boulevard to San Martin Boulevard. This is the area that we schemed up the right-of-way so we can avoid hitting some residential impacts along there. So that's why we converted it to a viaduct section. You still have the two lanes in each direction on the grade separated portion, and you also have the at-grade frontage roads, 2 lanes in each direction with multi-use trails on both the north side and the south side of the roadway. Next, we have typical section number 3. This starts from San Fernando Drive to the west end of the Gandy bridges. In this section, it expands out to a 3-lane typical section, 3 lanes in each direction, along with frontage roads on both the north and south side, and that multi-use trail does continue throughout that portion also. Now we move on to the Bay segment. Now I'll start from the right to the left. So currently, you have that 97 bridge, sorry, that 75 bridge, which is the existing eastbound bridge. You'll notice it when you drive across because it's a little bit lower to the bridge to the left. So that's the older bridge is on the right, and that's the lower one. We're going to demolish that bridge structure and then widen that existing 96 bridge structure that's shown in here with like a purple widening to the outer extremities of that image. That bridge structure was built to be widened, so we don't have to reconstruct it. So we're just going to widen that to give space for the additional lane and convert it to eastbound direction. And then on the north side, we're going to build a new bridge structure that's going to have 3 lanes going westbound, and also going to have that multi-use trail, which as you can see is the far left portion of that image also. So next, moving on to the Hillsborough segment. The Hillsborough segment, not many changes are proposed in that area. We're not proposing any widening within the Hillsborough portion. We're just going to tie in to the new bridge in that portion, so it will involve some construction, but it won't involve any capacity widening, and it won't involve any right-of-way impacts within Hillsborough County. So we have similar typical section. You have those Gandy Boulevard roads on the bottom, 2 lanes in each direction. Also going to have a multi-use trail along both the north side on the south side of the structure also. So in regards to access management, we have full median openings at strategic locations at Brighton Bay Boulevard, Mangrove Cay, San Martin Boulevard. And there's also 3 located just east of east of San Fernando Drive. You can see on those 3 images to the left. It's those causeway frontage crossing number 1, 2, and 3 in those images. And then the Brighton Bay portion, the longer image shown there, that shows the viaduct portion, but we have a crossing at Brighton Bay and also at San Martin Boulevard. And then there's also going to be a directional median at Bridge Street, located within Hillsborough County. Next, going on to the stormwater management and floodplain compensation. We're looking at 2 proposed stormwater management facilities. One of them is within an existing right-of-way. That's the one shown on the left. There's an existing pond that we can expand within that right-of-way. And the one on the right would be a new pond that's going to be off-site, and that will require an additional 1.3 acres of right-of-way for that pond facility. No floodplain compensation is required for this project. As part of the environmental effect study, we are looking at the wetland surface areas, the central fish habitats, and also protected species. We're also looking at the cultural resources, including archaeological, historical resources in Section 4F impacts, things such as park impacts. Also, the social environment, we're looking at land use, parks, and community impacts, including relocations. And we're also analyzing air quality, noise, and contamination as part of the physical requirement. So here on the screen, we do have the estimated project costs, design at 59 million, right of way at 41.9, wetland mitigation 1.25, the construction engineering inspection at 59.8, and the total construction cost for all segments at 598 million, with a total project cost of 761 million. Now, this proposed plan is consistent with both the Fort Pinellas and the Hillsborough TPO long-range transportation plans. And on the screen, we do have the proposed schedule and funding. So the data collection began in August the data study began in February 2020, and data collection phase finished in August of 2022. There was a project delay involved. As you can imagine, a lot changed between February and of 2020, and now preparation of documents is ongoing, and we have the public hearing scheduled for February 28th. I have more information on that on the upcoming slides. We're anticipating the PD&E study approval in the second quarter of this year. And below, we also have the 5-year adopted work program schedule. So currently, only the design of the Pinellas segment is funded. Our right-of-way and construction phases are not funded at this time. And the other 2 segments, the base segment and the Hillsborough segment, do not have any funding for the design or construction. And also just another reminder, no right-of-way is required for the base segment or for the Hillsborough portion. So like I mentioned, we do have a public hearing coming up. It's going to be Tuesday, February 28th. It's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. The in-person location is at the Pinellas Park Performing Arts Center. That's the location just indicated by the star on that map. You can also attend virtually through GoToWebinar, and that registration is now available on the project website. Registration is not required to attend in person. Folks can just show up. It will be open house from 5:30 to 6:30. Then we'll start the formal comment period from 6:30 on. And then once that finishes, we'll continue the open house format until 7:30 p.m. So we do have the project website as indicated on the screen, also the QR code that folks can scan. And again, my name is Craig Fox. My contact information is on the screen. So if you have any questions, you can certainly email me, call me, or you can ask questions right now.
All right, great. Thanks, Craig. You addressed one of the questions right away. That was the right of way, meaning was there going to be any right of way required? So it sounds like you're going to try to build inward and use most of the existing footprint.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments? Wait.
Yes, sir. Is there, I see that you have trails on both sides, at least on the Hillsborough side. Is there a transition point underneath the bridge where they can get on that north side of the new bridge?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so we do have on both the west side of the Gandy bridges and also the east side, we're going to have trails loop around connecting. So on the east side is going to connect the Alcalonas Junior Park to the north and also Gandy Park south. And on the west side, it's just going to loop around and connect both trails also. So folks coming on each side of the road will be able to get to the northern, the trail located on the most northern bridge structure.
Great, thank you.
Jeff, this is Jay. I had a quick question for Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Craig, obviously, anytime we get a connection for bike and ped over the bay, that's great. One of the things I noticed, and I know that this is just a very early rendering, that the treatment is different than what we're doing on the Howard Franklin. Isn't that correct? Is there a reason why they're different between the two?
So when you say the treatment, can you expand on that a little bit?
It looked like for the bicycle pedestrian, it was a 12-foot or whatever side path that's actually at grade with the travel lanes with a barrier separating them. And at one time, yeah, that's it. And at one time, I'm not sure if it is still the case, the Howard Franklin was kind of like grade separated. It was almost as though the bicycle and pedestrian was underneath the travel, underneath the lanes. I mean, not under the lanes, but not, if that, you know what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Long story short, I'm not sure if that is still how the Howard Franklin treatment is being built or not, but I was just wondering if they are different, and if they are different, why? Thanks.
Okay.
I can respond to at least part of that. I know that VPAC made a motion to try and have the Howard Franklin at a lower grade to provide some shading since it was on the north side of that. DOT did come back to us at that time and say that that wasn't sort of physically possible based on the lower bridge structure. So I can mention that, but I also would say that one difference between the Howard Franklin and this proposal is that there's a greater horizontal distance, if I'm not mistaken, on the Howard Franklin separating that trail from the travel lanes. So maybe that's a part of it too.
Okay. Yeah, I can look into those differences. I know certainly because Howard Franklin is an interstate, there's different kind of criteria as far as lane and shoulder widths on there. So that may kind of lead into that. But as far as the horizontal, the vertical kind of deflection, I'll have to double check on that. I just don't recall off the top of my head if there is actually a vertical separation between those two structures. Well,
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
sure.
Yeah, so I'm guessing what Jay was alluding to was like the Courtney Campbell Causeway.
Okay.
That is essentially like a whole different bridge.
Oh.
Like a bet.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I mean, that's what I imagined when Jay was. So,
From my understanding, the Howard Franklin rebuild also has a trail. So, but as Wade alluded to, it may not be built now in the way that it was in an earlier design of it. Anyway, I was just wondering, and I think you guys answered some of it, about why the treatments may be differently. And it may, as Craig said, the facility itself is treated differently. So, yeah.
Two questions. The old bridge, the one that would be demolished, did you look into repurposing it? And why? And if so, why didn't you go that way? Because I guess the cost of demolition versus just transitioning into a bike bed thing, or
it's kind of what happened to the Friendship Trail bridge structure. So that was a great opportunity that was taken where the bridge was saved, but over time, the bridge does degrade over time, and plus the spray and then salt water gets in there, and eventually it just causes it to erode. So you actually had chunks of the bridge were actually falling kind of into the bay, and especially that's a particular concern, especially for the portion where boats are allowed to pass underneath. And well, I mean, boats can really kind of go underneath. Small boats can go underneath any section of the bridge, really, but especially for that middle portion too. So it started to become more and more of a safety hazard, and eventually, I believe the county actually had to pay for the demolition of that structure because they took ownership and maintenance ownership over it. So, to avoid having a situation like that, we'd rather just build a new structure and build the trail on it versus just, continue to keep it there and maintain it.
Okay. The other thing, so this just brings back Howard Franklin. You're tearing one down, putting a new one.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong, but isn't Howard Franklin 850 million?
Yeah, but Howard Franklin is a much wider structure than this, and in addition, it was also the substructure was also strengthened to withstand the weight of a light rail transit on top of it too. So it's a much beefier, a much wider structure, and also just a much stronger structure overall.
I guess I'm just surprised that the price tag is pretty similar. Like I would expect Gandy to be cheaper, which it is, but I thought it would be a bit more cheap.
Well, the our proposed cost is for pretty much the entire segment. So it's from 4th Street all the way out to West Shore Boulevard. So it includes the grade separation portion in Pinellas County from 4th Street all the way to
Yeah, maybe the Howard Franklin is just construction, and here you have design.
It's all rolled into right.
Thank you.
No, thanks. This is a very interesting point. Great questions. Yeah, that's the kind of questions that our group is supposed to have. Everything well board and looked at and so forth. My only one comment from the environmental side, you talked about looking at the various impacts on the tree. Well, I know we hear fairly frequently about noise being an issue from the construction. So I just encourage you to take that into consideration. I can't speak to the Pinellas side so much. I do see where some of the roadway is adjacent to really close to a couple. So if there's an opportunity to separate. But on the Hillsborough side, I don't think there's as much, but Rattlesnake Point is blowing up residential. I mean, it's, all industry's going to be gone there before long. And the bridge build out will be towards that peninsula. Probably wouldn't have a big impact, but that is a section where there'll be no access road and so forth. So, full speed vehicles. So, the opportunity to maybe have at least a portion close to that with a wall, or at least an analysis, I think would be relevant. Yes, Jennifer.
Jennifer Malone, Planning Commission. I was just going to chime in on Rattlesnake Point. Since 2019, we've seen 4 rezonings from residential development on Rattlesnake Point. So while they haven't come out of the ground yet, those entitlements are there. And then next Monday, actually, so a week from today, at the Planning Commission, one of the last remaining parcels designated heavy industrial is going to the Planning Commission for recommendation to change it to a future land use that would allow residential development. So that is absolutely correct. Eventually, there won't be any more industry there, although there is still a parcel owned by the federal government on Rattlesnake Point. And that's heavy industrial, and that could remain for a long time. Interestingly.
So we'll just add that the Pinellas portion, and we're going to have these documents. So about a week before the public hearing is when we'll put the documents, the public hearing boards online on the website. So we'll actually have the roll plots available at that time, which actually show where we have proposed noise walls along the project corridor. And then for the Hillsborough portion, the Hill portion has to go with the bridge portion because you're not going to realign the road to nothing. So right now, those portions are not funded for any phase of construction. So when we do go to construction of those, most likely what we'll have to do is a reevaluation anyway. At that point, we'll relook at the noise impacts and reanalyze those. So they will be looked at.
Okay, yeah, and I know that you're dealing with primarily existing stuff on our side, and the Hillsborough side. I'm just thinking on the bridge, as it's built out closer, it's going to be a little bit closer. That, that little section, that might be, it's just a thought, but they're doing, a lot of building out there. And, and we always tell people, once we hear complaints about noise, it's, if it's not done on the front end, it's probably not getting done without a lot of extra litigation and whatever else you need to try to do that. So, any chance, and I'm telling you what you probably already know, any chance that that's considered and added on the front end is what we recommend. Yes, Brian.
Can you go back to your crossover slide?
Crossover slide.
Where you were showing where the access points were going.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Okay, so the Hillsborough County side, that's crossover, that is going to be where the boat ramp is approximately between the Coast Guard and the Marine Corps?
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I think, so I have it on there, but I didn't talk about it. So we do have the Bridge Street one that I did mention, but I don't think I mentioned this one here, so we're proposing another opening there, which would make it a lot easier to access the dock. Especially if you're going westbound on Gandy Boulevard. So right now, ever since the Selman connection opened up, you have to kind of go west and then do a U-turn, and then in order to so you can imagine doing that with the boat trailer is a little bit more difficult. So we're just looking ahead. We're proposing a new opening there. So it's kind of the east side of Gandy Park South, where it'll make it a lot easier for folks to come in there with boat and trailer.
All right, any other comments? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Gibsonton Drive PD&E.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Hensel. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation. I'm the PM for the Gibsonton Drive PD&E study. I also have Jeff Novotny with me. He's the consultant working on the study for us. This is our kickoff presentation. The study is just getting underway. So Gibsonton Drive is the PD&E study is approximately 0.9 miles. This study is from Fern Hill. Okay. The study is from Fern Hill Drive to US 301, just east of the I-75 and Gibsonton interchange. We're looking at increasing capacity to address and enhance safety issues. The purpose and need of this study is to address future roadway capacity issues as well as improve safety conditions. We're looking to accommodate traffic volumes for the future year 2045. Segment does experience high crash rates, approximately 6 times the statewide average. This is our existing typical section. Currently have a 4-lane roadway with 2 lanes in each direction. We also have turn lanes throughout the corridor. There's a 22-foot raised median, and we also have left turn lanes. We have 4-foot paved shoulders, 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of the road, with some gaps on the south side. And there's a 45-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. The existing right-of-way is approximately 125 feet wide. We're looking at a proposed 6-lane typical section with 3 lanes in each direction. We'd have 11-foot travel lanes with curb and gutter on the outside to encourage lower travel speeds. We're looking to fill in the sidewalk gaps on the south side of the roadway. We're also coordinating with Hillsborough County. I should have said that at the beginning. This project is in coordination with Hillsborough County. We're working with them to develop our typical section for sidewalks, bike lanes, shared use path, or some combination of those typicals. So we are working with them to figure out what suits their needs best. We do expect additional right-of-way at some intersections for the turn lane improvements, as well as along the corridor for bike and ped accommodations and for off-site stormwater ponds. Like I said, safety is an issue on this road. We experience more than 6 times higher than statewide average of crashes. The intersection crash rate is also about 3 times higher than the statewide average. This is our heat map of crashes along the corridor. As you can see, US 301 experienced the highest number of crashes along this corridor. We did have 2 fatal crashes in the 5-year period. Rear end crashes amounted for about 47% of our total crashes. Project is just getting underway, but we are going to be looking at stormwater management, including floodplain and stormwater, floodplain compensation sites and stormwater needs. We're also looking at environmental factors, including natural resources, cultural resources, social and economic resources, as well as physical resources. Do you have a public involvement plan? We did send out study kickoff newsletters. Those were mailed in December. We are planning on sending out public hearing announcements. We are targeting a public hearing in the 4th quarter of this year. So we'll be sending out notices to the public as well as stakeholders and elected officials as we near that public hearing. Then we'll be sending out a study completion newsletter once the study is approved. Do plan on holding small group meetings throughout the corridor. And if anybody needs has a small group they'd like us to meet with, or if there's any needs that come up, we're happy to meet. And then we're doing the public hearing, and we'll also have information posted up on our project website. So like I said, this is where we are in the process. We're just now doing our environmental and engineering analysis, and we're targeting that public hearing at the end of the year. This is our contact information. We have a project website that's available for you to go look at what we have so far. Pretty much similar to this kickoff presentation. That's available up on the project website now. And then that's my contact information if anyone has any questions.
All right, thanks, Ashley. Okay, I don't have much to say except I know for a fact firsthand this is a very busy corridor, and I don't know. Again, I'm not with TPO, so sometimes I don't know all the ins and outs. But I know the intersection at 301 in Gibsonton is terrible, especially coming from the Fish-Off side. So I don't know if that leads to frustration and people running through that yellow or what have you. But I don't know how much this would tie into that. But any redesign to help move that traffic. Certainly good. And 301, anyway, yes, I can just say I know what intersection is bad, and we know how bad South County is getting with the influx of people. So while we're talking, could you go back to the heat map for me?
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Well, you can, I didn't really have a particular one. I just wanted to look at this a little bit. Go ahead, Mike.
So I noticed you're talking about or proposing 11-foot lanes out here. I'm a little concerned because there's a large Caterpillar facility there down on Fort Hill.
Okay.
With a lot of oversized vehicles coming in and out of there. So maybe a wider outside lane. I mean, I understand wanting to keep the speeds down. I do. But they bring a lot of oversized vehicles in and out of there. A lot of them are probably going to and from the interstate, so that's an outside, but some of them do go eastbound to 301.
Okay. We can look at
So
that.
just a comment more than.
Yeah, we can look into them. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, one thing that, you know, I know from having traveled this, and this is somewhat outside the scope of this, but when you come off that interstate and traveling north, it's a big wide exit ramp and you can carry all kinds of speed. And I think part of the issue is you're carrying a whole lot of speed and then getting up to that line at Fern Hill. And I'm wondering if how many were caused from excessive speed going that direction. I mean, I don't know if we even have that breakdown, but again, I think it's a little outside the scope of what you're having. That's just theory as to where some of those things come from. Because I know I've caught myself, and I'm going to say I'm guilty, over the speed limit getting off of there because it's so easy to just, you know, even drive 70 miles an hour for a while and then all of a sudden. You know, so I don't know if that's something, or even if it was a discussion about, you know, speed limit sign that should try to reduce it quicker.
There are improvements coming to the Gibsonton interchange. So I think it's a 2DI, is that right? So that may be making some improvement to that.
Oh, yes, Bob.
This is Bob Campbell. Wade probably knows they paid, we had a consultant, Atkins, paid by TPO, and actually did a study on this corridor, it's a high injury network corridor, which involved this project here. And that particular report by that consultant did do a detailed traffic safety analysis of the issues within this corridor.
Yes, and I will send that to you, Ashley, if I haven't already.
I think we have it.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah. I was going to say something about that study, and one of the things we observed out there, because I spent a lot of time on site going across the Gibsonton Drive bridge over I-75, the Walmart on the west side of that bridge, southwest corner, if you will, there is a surprisingly high number of people actually walking over the bridge and the shoulder as it exists today. Even if you go look on the Google Street View, you will see people on that. And I observed multiple people walking and riding bikes across that bridge. So I think these pedestrian and bike improvements are also well warranted, and as are the capacity and safety improvements. So thank you.
Thank you.
I see the same on Causeway Boulevard, people walking and biking on the shoulder. And Walmart actually is one of our biggest ridership stops on Gibsonton Drive.
Okay.
We do have a few stops on your study area. I don't know what the ridership is, but I can look into it.
Okay.
Questions? Any other comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last up is the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan initial steps.
Mr. Shaka, I'm making you the presenter right now.
Can you see my screen? Good afternoon. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen. Not in presentation mode, though.
Okay. So let me just make sure, and you can hear me clear, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So are you seeing the presentation mode now?
We are seeing your notes page.
Okay, sorry. Let me just try to switch these windows. Now, is it correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, TAC committee members. This is Vishaka Shivraman. I'm TPO staff, and I'm going to be presenting this initial steps along with Elizabeth Watkins, who will be joining for the latter part of the presentation. So this this presentation will be divided into two sections. The first section will talk about long-range plan development initial steps and a background information on some of the base year data and the steps leading to the development. And the second part of the presentation will be, which will be covered by Elizabeth, will talk in detail about the revenue forecast and how to estimate some of the costs. Just to give you a quick background about what the LRTP is, this slide will show you, just to explain to you that Long Range Transportation Plan is a 25-year long-term planning document that aligns with the county's vision for the future to meet the growing demands of the community. This is a blueprint for the future, and it helps to guide the public funds towards the right transportation improvements for the county. Like I said, it is the long range transportation plan that we are doing is for the year 2050, and it's a 25-year plan. The preparation time is from 2020 to 2025. So every year, every 5 years, this has to be updated. The LRTP is a core planning document for the TPO, and it is produced as a result of extensive public outreach efforts. The first slide I would like to show you is a little bit background information which will help for how the plan is being built. So this slide will show you the base year map for 2020. Like I said, the two important factors that determine the needs of the county are employment and population. So the 2020 year map, if you can see on my screen, it shows the employment and population as a dot density map, where 100 people represent 1 dot. The employment is shown in orange color, and the people and the population is shown in purple color. This helps to understand what the current needs are. So moving on to the future needs, this is very important to know how the county grows and where the people will live, work, and access places of destinations like school, shopping, work, etc. in the future. So the slide I'm showing you currently is initial projections that have been prepared by Planning Commission. These will be vetted through the different jurisdictions, and which will help to understand the current the population growth and the employment growth for 2050. So these are very basic preliminary estimates, and these numbers are currently still being reviewed. These are the different jurisdictions. So in the bar on the blue will show you the current population, and the gray will show the increase, and the total number is what is being presented for 2050. This slide is the similar slide showing the employment growth by jurisdiction, and you can see that the current jobs is about 923,000, and in future we are expecting over 260,000 jobs by 2050. It'll be over 1 million jobs. So this is another slide which will give you a basic understanding of what goes into the model building. So this is a very important step in base year data preparation, and I will show you the timeline of some of the other steps in the next slide. But this slide I just wanted to bring up to you to give you an understanding of how the base year data is prepared. This is a clip of the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model, which is a mathematical model, and the lines that you see on the screen show the roadway network of the highway in Hillsborough County. This has traffic counts data for the base year 2020, and for 2050 it will show a projected volume calculated mathematically. This helps to understand the places where the traffic volumes will be high and where the needs are. On the highlighted version in the right side, you can see that these are the annual volume for 2050, and each link will show the roads are built into links and nodes. So this will bring back to the basic steps of creating the plan. I just showed you the base year data preparation and some of the products and the components that go into the base year preparation. During the year 2021 and 22, we have been preparing the base year data, and currently we are in the process of looking at the 2050 growth scenarios and future year forecast, which I brought it up in an earlier slide, which includes the population and jobs. The initial steps are these, followed by in the coming years, we will be producing documents for assessing the needs. They are called needs assessment, and also we'll be producing a cost revenue forecast. Throughout this process, there will be extensive public outreach, as I mentioned before. We will be having a major public outreach effort in 2024, producing the cost feasible scenarios and leading up to the plan adoption in 2024 November at a TPO public hearing. Like I said, this is a very core planning document, and it has to be adopted in 2024 for the year 2025. So this will help you to understand what are the major steps in a nutshell. I would like to break the previous slide into major categories. So these you would call it as the ingredients that build up the steps. These are part of the steps, not necessarily in any specific timeline or order, but just to give you the three major components of it. The public engagement includes a 30-day notice period. Like I said, there will be a survey distributed sometime around 2024, focusing on key issues and priorities. It will be presented to the board and the TPO committees. It has some information on the cost, revenue, and the system performance, which will help the committee and board to make informed decisions about the projects. Also, we'll be producing the cost feasible scenarios, and I will explain each one of these steps in a little bit more detail in the coming slides. This helps to match the potential funding and the expenditures. The third major ingredient is the forecasting system performance, and we will be we will be going with two sets of forecasts, one which includes the existing funding scenarios and one which will look at expanded funding scenarios. Elizabeth will cover more of these in the following slides. So this will help you to understand how the survey and the public outreach efforts were focused in the previous LRTP. It was called Its Time Hillsborough 2045, leading up to Its Time Tampa 2045. This public and community feedback was used to access the current conditions, understand the changing conditions, and evaluate the future needs to make informed decisions to fund the most important projects in the county. There was a survey distributed, and all these are data-driven approach to arrive at funding scenarios, what we call as a performance-based planning approach. This slide will help you to understand how again, this just shows you some of the outreach efforts and the pictures that we took at various events. The survey, there were extensive public outreach conducted at 2 events, over 34 events precisely, and also online during the years 2018 and 2019. This was for the previous 2045 LRTP. And it helped to identify some scenarios, and the participants could vote and decide what they favored the most. This activity is what we call as a sketch planning activity, which helps in evaluating alternate scenarios and selecting policies and actions to address the issues. Throughout the process, it was not just the public outreach, but we also, excuse me, coordinated regionally with some of the local partners and stakeholders in the community. Like through local governments had this growth scenarios were presented to them, and the community, there will be comprehensive plan coordination with the Planning Commission. The neighboring counties will be coordinated through SCTPA, the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance, and also with all the transportation agencies. This was also conducted last year. This will be this was also conducted last time, but these are the same process that will be following this year also. Breaking the third ingredient, what I had shown you earlier, which is the forecasting system performance. So so just to help you understand that, the system performance is broken into 5 major funding buckets that was adopted in last LRTP, namely the good repair and resilience, Vision Zero, smart cities, real choices when not driving, and major investments for economic growth. So each of the needs is assessed, what we call it as a needs assessment document, to show what are the needs under each of the following buckets and what could be funded using the money. So the first major category that we look at is good repair and resilience, which will be developed based on every jurisdiction's typical cost per mile for maintenance. We also look at HART's estimate for vehicle replacement cost. We also look at the transport at each jurisdiction's roads, which are vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. So what could be, looking at all these data, we estimate the costs and develop them to show how much each of these projects would cost. The second two major categories are Vision Zero and Smart Cities, and each of this will help to identify projects that could be funded under this funding bucket. So specifically, the Vision Zero, the cost and these projects, the investments for travel time reliability and safety would be forecast using a post-processor tool, which is developed by a consultant, and the cost estimates can be bundled into improvements to be applied onto roadway segments, again with a typical cost per mile for each of the bundle. The financial scenarios will vary depending on where the miles are and how we can bundle the projects according to the needs of the specific area or jurisdiction. The congestion improvement projects are included under Smart City, and the safety projects will be included under the Vision Zero program to be funded. The next category is a real choices when not driving. So for these projects, for the real choice projects, we look at the estimates from HART's Transit Development Plan, again in coordination with HART agency, and look at what they have forecast for the year 2050. We also look at the Transportation Disadvantaged Service Plan, Greenways and Trails Master Plan to know which trails will be existing and where the needs are. All of these will most likely lead to the major investments for economic growth, which is the biggest category of projects that are under LRTP. These are some major projects which will be helpful for economic growth of the region, and they mainly come out of growth in downtown, and also the congestion, growth in downtown, growth countywide, and also congestion in corridors due to the traffic growth estimated from the travel demand model. And the cost estimates will be developed for the most congested corridors in the region. All these will show the cost feasible projects that can be developed using the funding amount of funding that we have. Also, we look at, although they are not called funding buckets, we evaluate every project from a freight needs perspective and an equity needs perspective. So freight which are projects which are regionally significant, and they could be either included under smart cities if they are operational type of projects, or they are big budget projects. They can be included under the major investments for economic growth. And as I mentioned before, a big role is also being played by equity. We evaluate all the projects to see if they favor the equity needs of the county, and if they can be considered under any of these previous funding buckets that I had explained before. So this is the major slide, and which is one of the big components that help to build the long-range transportation plan. From this, I will move to section 2, which will cover in detail some of this cost revenues, and Elizabeth will take over.
Great, thank you so much, Vishaka. So Vishaka did a nice job of explaining the long-range transportation process at a high level. But for this section, I'm going to do a deep dive into the revenue forecast, which is an important input to the long-range transportation plan. Next slide, please. So I'm going to touch on 3 main things. First, how exactly is the revenue forecast used in the long-range transportation plan? What are our existing funding sources? And then what are some potential future funding sources that are currently unlevied? Next slide, please. So one question that we aim to answer within long-range transportation plan is, what exactly can our community afford, and how do we estimate that? So the first step of it is doing a forecast of those transportation revenues, and that's where we are right now. We're very much in the early stages of answering this question. So the team is undergoing an analysis to project out federal, state, and local transportation revenues from 2023 all the way to 2050. Then the next step in answering this question will be taking that project list that Vishaka mentioned and then aligning it with the potential revenue sources based on whatever eligible projects could be funded, because you can't use transit funds to do an interstate widening. So we have to go through some analysis and aligning that. And then lastly, the TPO board is the decision-making body that will actually allocate those revenues to individual projects or program categories. So this is a nice visualization from a previous long-range transportation plan that shows exactly what transportation projects can be funded based on those projected available revenues. So to orient you to this a little bit better, you can read the title, which says Transportation Financial Scenario 8B, a 1-cent sales tax, and of course adjusted based on the balance of programs of projects. So this was one of many different financial scenarios that can be considered as a data exercise through the long-range plan development process. In that left-hand column, it's titled expenditures, which essentially just means the types of projects and programs that could be funded. And of course, those projects come from stakeholder input, needs assessment, community impact, community feedback, et cetera. And then the right-hand column shows the revenues that are projected to be available to fund those community priorities, transportation priorities. And at the bottom in blue are kind of those traditional existing revenue sources, federal and state grants, gas tax, mobility fees, that sort of thing. But in purple, that was the scenario that was considered here. If there was a 1% sales tax, what exactly could you fund with that? So I think that's one real exciting thing about the long range plan is that we can dream up different scenarios for our elected officials and decision makers to consider in the future. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to quickly recap some of the existing funding sources that we are evaluating right now for the revenue forecast. On this page are revenues that either flow through FDOT or through THEA. Of course, these revenues are for a specific purpose, whether they're capacity programs or if they already committed to another project. Same thing with THEA's revenues, their toll revenues, the $106.4 million are used on their facilities only. Next slide, please. But we do a really close look in those local revenues, like I mentioned earlier. So this slide shows the different fuel tax that are currently levied. It's 7 cents in the county, I believe, and about $70 million annually come to the various jurisdictions within Hillsborough County. We're planning to use a 1% projected growth rate based on the FDOT Revenue Estimating Conference. They suggest using that to forecast out future fuel tax revenues. And we will also be forecasting the community investment tax. As many of you know, the CIT is going to be sunsetting in 2026. So would love the committees and the board's feedback on how to handle it from 2026 until 2050 to the plan of the horizon year of the plan. But this is something we're taking a close look at. And here's just our initial estimates for mobility fees for all 4 jurisdictions within Hillsborough County. Based on feedback that we've gotten from our stakeholders, we're intending to hold them constant and not use a growth rate just because of the variability of the mobilities or impact fees that are collected annually. And then lastly, here are some revenues from our partners at HART, taken from their TDP as well as Sunshine Line and their TD annual report. So these will all be documented in the long range plan and forecasted out. So the last part of my presentation is those currently unlevied sources. So if you remember that purple part of the chart that I was showing previously of that potential 1% sales tax, Here are a few scenarios we're considering purely as a point of information for the board. Those are a possible 1 mil ad valorem increase for all of the authorities, possibly doing some analysis on a up to 1% sales tax that would not be effective any earlier than January 2029. Also, if any of the jurisdictions are interested in pursuing special assessments for transportation, that is something that we could do the analysis on, as well as the potential of using electric vehicle charging fees to fund transportation projects. But we are all ears, or if there are other scenarios we should consider. Our intention is to bring a list of these to the TPO board in the next few months and get their sign off before we start to do any scenario planning. Next slide. I'm just going to wrap us up here for next steps. So we will be back to committees often over the next year or two, talk about growth scenarios, different needs assessments, of course, conducting public outreach, and we're targeting that November 2024 for adoption. We appreciate the opportunity to present today, and we'd be happy to take any questions or any feedback you may have.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Do we have any questions or comments on the ORTV? Yes, Jesus.
Hi, Jesus from HART. 2 quick questions. The 1 mil increase that's mentioned on your previous slide, would that be +1? So we would have 1.5, or would that be take it up to 1?
That's a great point. We could do either. For HART, I know the current millage rate is 0.5. It could be adding 0.5 or adding a whole. Actually, I don't think state statute allows that. So for HART, I think it would have to be 0.25 to do that. But
also,
that's
like,
a great, yeah.
So like take it to 0.75?
Yeah, for some reason I have in my head that the maximum millage for transit is 0.75. But point well taken that it would be an increase for transit purposes for the HART service area, and that we would be open to doing any range of increases if it would be of value to our partners.
Okay, yeah, the limit is 3 mils. I don't know who sets that, if that's the state or Pinellas does 1 mil, and currently Hillsborough does a 0.5 mil.
Okay.
I'm just reading an old meeting minutes. And then the other question about the 1% sales tax, no earlier than 2029. I'm guessing that's due to the recycling of politicians.
I think we threw January 2029 that would probably be the earliest that we would expect to be able to, that if the decision makers wanted to put that on the ballot, that would be the soonest available time to do so, just given current priorities.
Yeah, makes sense. That's a nice way to put it.
Yes.
It's like, going back to the millage comment, I was shocked when it was pointed out to me actually by Ms. LeGrand that we pay more in millage for our public libraries than we do public transportation in this county. And not saying that libraries aren't important, but we sit around this table and we talk about transportation solutions, and it's just something that she had actually brought to my attention. That was something that we needed to leave on what's going on, and that definitely a piece of thing that I think people would want to look at is that equalizing that a little bit more, with especially now with the reality that a sales tax is not happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3 mil, 1 mil, 0.5 mil thing I mentioned, I'm just regurgitating what Commissioner Kemp said in December. So I'm not the source of that data.
All right, good. Good questions. Any other comments? Okay, well, it looks like you got a good start on this, and we appreciate the presentation this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, that ends the scheduled reports. Next up is any old business or new business. Any Anybody have anything they would like to bring to the table? Any topics they'd like to see on the agenda for the future, Basil? Feel free to write that, or you can always email Wade. He'd be happy to receive that. All right, with that, I believe we are ready for adjournment. I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing nodded heads. So, our next meeting is on March 6th. So, I think that does it. Thank you very much. A year until the next person, thank everyone.
We should have. That's what I'm.